Welcome to Connecting to the Wisdom Within with Marion Jorgensen and Catherine Anness. And today we're going to be talking about inner resources. So I'll hand over to Catherine and she can start.
Well, just like that, Marion, I'll jump right in. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'm really honored to be here with you and want to say hello to the women who are with us now and to all of the people who may join us at a later time as well. So great to be here with you. And I think we're getting together at a time when sharing whatever we have and being of service to our friends and family and the world around us, it feels like a really good thing to be doing. So I'm really glad that you invited me to be here. And I've been thinking in the last few weeks around the topic of what do I have to share that might be the most helpful to others? What do I have to offer to be of service that might be the most valuable to people who are struggling, particularly at this time? But I ask myself that always, not just at this time, because I've certainly discovered a number of things that have given me a very happy life and have changed my life from being one of struggle to a life of much greater grace and ease. And that's great for me, but how can I be of service to others who aren't in that place is the question that I most often ask myself. So that's what we want to talk about today so the answer to that is what I've discovered is that I have inner resources that I can access, and that those inner resources are not unique to me, that they're universal. And so as a coach and as a person who creates events and gatherings, the thing that I love to do and that I feel most passionate about is helping other people access their own inner resources. So that's where when we were talking about it, Marion, we sort of came up with this topic. So I'll just talk a little bit about my history in terms of seeking that and looking outside in the world for answers. And I did a lot of that. I'm 56 years old now and explored a number of different avenues, as many people have. And I was always looking for something outside of myself. I was always looking for answers outside of myself. I really didn't understand what it meant to look within, or, if you told me I had inner resources, maybe, 20 years ago, or when I was younger, I would have just laughed at you because it certainly didn't seem to me that I had any inner resources. So I studied a number of things and came across, an understanding called the three principles. And so I come from that place because for me, it really simplified my understanding of life. But for those of you who have no idea what the three principles are, don't worry about that. It really is just a description of the human experience. And this helps us to understand how we can access our own inner wisdom and then what takes us away from that wisdom. I have a mentor, her name's Kathy Casey. Some of you know her. And I heard her say something. Isn't she wonderful? I heard her say something very simple once and it stayed with me. And she said, I teach people three things. I teach them they have wisdom, where it comes from, and what gets in the way of it.
Yeah.
Now, that changed my life. Hearing her say that and then hearing her elaborate on it is one of the things that changed my life. So I just want to say to anyone who's listening who doesn't feel that they do have inner wisdom, because obviously if we all had access to inner wisdom, we would be comforted by that and we would be accessing it. I've come to see that I always knew that I had something within that was guiding me. I didn't understand how I seemed to be taken away from it so easily. so often in my life. And so I lived in the part of I lived in confusion more than I lived in clarity. And so that was my quest. How do I flip that around? How do I come from clarity and inner peace more often, and make the foray into confusion less often and less frequently? And so what's happened recently in my life through this understanding is that has been flipped around. So let me try and share. I think we all have inner wisdom. I think our personal conditioning, our personal conditioned thinking takes us away from it. I love the little, we have these snow globes, right? So someone said to me also that our suffering is all in our personal narrative. Okay, it's all in our personal story. So I have this conditioned personal thinking that I relate to and think that that's who I am. And then underneath, I have this deeper wisdom. It's a deeper knowing. It isn't intellectual. My intellectual mind wants to analyze. My intellectual mind accesses the information that I've been able to accumulate. And it doesn't really have a deeper knowing. Underneath that intellectual thinking is this deeper wisdom that for me is divine in nature. It's an intelligence that's running through everything. I'm an expression of that. Everything is an expression of that. And the more that we realize that, the more we can access it. So this little snow globe, so the snow is our personal thinking. And this particular snow globe has the word love in it. And as my personal thinking quiets down, I have access to this divine intelligence that, in my opinion, is love. And not a romantic love, but is a love that contains intelligence, that contains the intelligence of the universe. And so it comes with a peaceful, beautiful feeling. And that's how I distinguish between my own personal mind that is often agitated and disturbed. It's completely normal to be under the influence of that, to go in and out of it. But what I came to understand was that my wisdom was never disturbing. My wisdom always came with a peaceful clarity and was more of a gentle nudging of going in one direction or another. And over the years, I learned to listen. So I learned what to listen for, and I learned to listen more often to that inner wisdom. I heard a really interesting analogy recently, and it was that our personal thinking is like a marching band. So there's a marching band going on, going through our awareness often. And there's a tuba section and a drum section, and it's very loud. And our wisdom is the beautiful flute. Now, we often can't hear the flute. It's always playing. But when we're listening to and giving our focus and attention to the marching band, the flute is lost. Now, does that make any sense? That's,
Yeah.
And I think that
it does, Catherine, because when you were talking about that it feels right when our inner wisdom comes up, and clients often ask me, what's the difference between the inner wisdom, that feeling of calm and knowing, and then the times when they have anxiety and all those sorts of things. And we're talking about inner resources, and to get them connected to that inner resource, their inner wisdom, I have to remind them that the body is talking to them all of the time. So when it's giving anxiety in the body, that tightness, that uncomfortable feeling, it's just a reminder really from the body to say that we're just not seeing things right, and we're not connected to our inner wisdom.
I love that.
Yeah, because people think that anxiety is something they should be frightened of, and they need to fix, but it isn't. It's just a message. And that's the same, by the way, for depression and all those sorts of things.
I really love that. I love that, Marion. Thank you for that. I taught yoga.
Mm.
So the mind-body connection is very important for me. And like you, that's exactly how I've come to see it.
Mm.
Is when my body is tense and constricted. It's like a temple bell. It's trying to wake me up. It's actually
Yes.
a beautiful system that works perfectly. It's a perfect reflection of what I'm doing with my mind, where I'm focusing, and the quality of thinking that's running through my mind.
Mm.
So those are actually one thing. So there's a physiological response to the
Yeah.
thoughts that run through my mind. And what do they say? We're generating 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, far more than any of us are actually aware of. And so that thought stream is creating a physiological response. There's some good science behind this that I'm not going to try and quote. We can each go on that journey ourselves to find out. But we really want to pay attention. I want to say the other thing too. So you have this thought stream and you have a physiological response to it. That for me was so important. The guiding light of my wisdom comes with a feeling of clarity. It comes with a feeling of greater peace. And it's a signal to me that I'm aligning my personal mind with a larger intelligence that I'm an expression of and a part of. I think that I just want to say something that I've discovered and really believe that, as our outer resources are restricted and taken away from us, it's really an opportunity. I don't say this lightly because I know a tremendous number of people are suffering. But I really, truly believe this. I really believe that as our outer resources are restricted and taken away, it's an opportunity for us to look within and
Mm.
to start to cultivate a greater awareness of our inner resources.
Mm.
And when we haven't done that, it's extremely frightening. And I have a tremendous amount of compassion for people who are simply not feeling connected to their inner resources.
Mm.
But I want to be a voice of hope and to say that now's the perfect time. If you haven't taken this journey in the past, now when we've had to slow down, when so many of us are having to be isolated, now is the time to be listening for the voices that bring you a greater sense of calm.
Mm.
Look in the direction of wisdom. Ask yourself. It can be as simple as asking yourself and opening up. I'd like to understand what this means on a deeper level. I can remember saying, I don't know what inner wisdom is. I don't have a clue. That just confuses me. But something in me, which is always there, that's the wisdom that's within already. It's the essence of who we are. We can't not have it. It's not something we have to create ourselves. We just have been conditioned away from it. It is the life force within us.
Yeah.
So learning to listen, has been the greatest thing. And for me, the beginning of my journey was, I can remember just saying, I need to understand. I want to understand more on a deeper level. And I listened. I got still as often as I could. I went in the direction of the things that lit me up. One of the things that I know now that I didn't before, and it's just led me in directions that I never would have imagined, is when I hear something that's really aligned with my own truth, I light up inside. I light up. I imagine that every cell in my body just is enlivened. And I have learned to pay attention to that and go in that direction. My path is not the same as your path. I believe that we all have a unique and sacred path, in this journey of life. And so I'm never telling other people what they should do. I'm saying if you access your own inner wisdom, that will guide you unfailingly. And that's really, all we need to do. I learned not to listen so much and give so much respect to my own conditioned thinking, which is where all of my fear and insecurity was. Now, I think we're all familiar with that inner voice that says we're not good enough, we don't know enough, we should be afraid, we should be frightened. I think we all have our own version of that going on. And I can say, when I heard someone tell me, okay, you need to give that less respect, that's the thing that's been running the show here in your life. I knew they were right on the money. And so something in me heard the truth in that. And I don't really understand it. I can't really explain it. But something in me knew that that wasn't my true identity. That story of who I was, about how I wasn't good enough, about how, it started to lose its grip on me. And the less I listened to it, the more there was an opportunity for this deeper wisdom. And I say wisdom, Marion. Sometimes that's a big word for people. I'm not Einstein. If you get to know me, you know that this wisdom is very ordinary. It can be extremely profound, profound, but I want to bring it down to the ordinary and the practical. It's a simple wisdom that says, brush your teeth or do the dishes or make the phone call.
Eat this and don't eat that.
Yes. Yes. No, this is so beautiful. And it can sound so esoteric, but it's really profoundly, it's normal. It's normal and everyday and profound and infinite. And I use the word divine, but no one else has to use that. For me, it's divine and sacred and beautiful, and we're all a part of it. But there's you can have a scientific bent and just think of it as the energy of all things. We know that there's an energy flowing through everything that's perceivable, and we're an expression of that. So it sounds very huge, and it is, but it looks very normal. And I think we sometimes overlook it because it can be so normal and so everyday. And, but it because you'll be living in a greater sense of contentment. You'll be living with a greater sense of what I need is within. And so the circumstances externally no longer, although we go in and out of fear and anxiety, what we come back to is this inner clarity and this inner sense of connectedness and this inner sense of, I'm not on my own here. I have this inner guidance system and it's always working. I just haven't always known what to listen for within, because my own personal conditioning, again, there's a tuba and there's there's brass instruments. It is loud, and I gave it all of my focus for most of my life. So the hold that has on my attention, now it's almost amusing to me. And I say this with great respect for the terror it used to instill in me. And I used to live under the influence of that. And what I've come to see is there's this deeper infinite wisdom. And this, it's a creative energy. So the things that you're doing with your other guests, I mean, that's the creative energy that expresses itself in all of the various ways that we see in the world around us. Now we can use this, this gift of thought, or, it expresses itself in human beings as thought. Like I came to understand thought as the creative energy in the universe, in a big way, the way through thought I express who I am uniquely in this world. And I think Sydney Banks said thought is the paintbrush on the canvas of your life.
Yeah.
And so at one time in my life, I used thought to be a yoga teacher and to express through yoga. I used it to express through Reiki. I have friends who are artistic, who are scientific. And so we're all expressing this divine energy through the gift of thought in our own unique way. And for me, every path is sacred. Like this unique energy, this infinite, energy is being expressed in unique ways, and this explains to me too, if people are being driven by their fear and their anxiety. I mean, for me, this explains what we look out on at the world and we wonder how people could do certain things. But I really have come to see that we're each doing the best we can with what we know and believe in this moment. That's all we get to do as human beings, and as I understand more, the way I express that changes. And the more I come from my own inner wisdom, the less I'm coming from fear. And at a time like this, we all need to be coming from something other than fear as much as possible. And this isn't a should. It's just I want to point towards possibility. Not tell people what they should or shouldn't do, but really open up a door to the potential and possibility that I believe is within us all. And so I wish I could give an X equals, one, or, X plus Y equals, Z instructions in terms of how to access your own inner wisdom. I don't think it's that easy though. I think we each have to find our own way to that. I think we have to learn to trust that it exists. First of all, we have to be open to that possibility. I think something inside of us knows it. But we may have spent years ignoring it or not listening to it. And so for me personally, when I heard someone say that, a part of me knew it was true. Some little flame inside of me flickered, although I was very far from experiencing it and expressing it in my life. And so I think that's why it's really important for people like yourself, Marion, and what you're putting out into the world. We don't know who's going to hear or what they will hear in what we put out, but the truth within us all, I think, wakes up to a greater degree as it is expressed in the world around us. So the more of us who are coming from that place of love and wisdom within, the more we're putting that out into the world, the more we're contributing to that waking up in others. So I did a lot of things in my life. I did yoga, I did Reiki, I studied psychology, and all of those things contributed to bringing me to where I am. So I have a deep respect for whatever people are drawn to and whatever resonates for them. For me, I knew it was I was always interested in the mind and how thought worked, because people were doing all kinds of wonderful things with body work around me in life, but their personal thinking was derailing them and taking them offline for long periods of time. So the simplicity of the message of the three principles, or of the inside out understanding that I'm living in the feeling of the thought stream that's running through my mind, and that when I let my mind settle, if I feel anxious or afraid or insecure, I'm not seeing things clearly. This is what I came to understand. I'm not seeing things as clearly as I could. So I'm lost in this thinking that's very short-sighted. It doesn't, that part of my being that feels alone and separate. And if I can just let that settle, like I lived my life from there and you don't want to know, like it was just a lot of chaos. I thought that was all there was. As I've learned to let that settle and let a deeper wisdom arise and put action behind the wisdom that arises instead of the fear and insecurity, now that's, my life has become a much simpler, more graceful experience. Now that sounds too simple.
No, I agree with that. I had the same experience. Yeah. Wouldn't you agree, Catherine, that when people start really trying to understand or see that wisdom within themselves, that the first thing that I mention, I'm sure you do too, is, when you talk about that energy of life, that universal energy that's so creative, we just have to look at ourselves and see that when we cut ourselves, it heals beautifully. I mean, we take that for granted, don't we? But this amazingness is going on within us. Our heart pumps and, the blood moves around our body. and that whispering voice, that knowing feeling when you go for a job interview and one pays a lot of money and one doesn't, and your heart just sings with the one that doesn't, but your head thinks you should go with this one over here. And but so when we start being guided by that knowing, we fall into hearing the wisdom more and more. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I've happened to me, I'm sure, with many other people too.
Exactly, Marion. And I wish there was an easier way to help people be further along. But again, I have this deep respect for where everyone is in their own journey. And it is up to each one of us to learn to listen to and act on the wisdom within. No one can do that for us. Yeah. But when we hear it, when we hear and resonate with other people who are living from that clarity, and keep looking in that direction, keep engaging in those conversations, this is a deeper truth. And so this deeper truth wakes up within you, and you realize that it isn't so much that you have to do anything as that what you were doing to take you away from it falls away. And this deeper wisdom emerges within you. And you're right. For me, there's a psychological and emotional healing component to it, in the same way that the body heals itself. Like this animating energy, this animating principle within me, I can sense that. I can feel the energy flowing through my body. Now that contains wisdom and intelligence. And when I don't think myself away from it, in the same way that my body heals, when I don't think myself away from that, I recognize an innate wellness, an innate wholeness that I didn't have access to before, psychologically and emotionally. And as I let that manifest in my experience more and more, and really, how I do that is, again, by engaging less with the personal conditioned thinking that's full of fear and insecurity. I have complete compassion for that occurring. It occurs within all of us. I didn't know before that I didn't have to be driven by that fearful and insecure thinking. I thought it was important. I thought that the answers were there somehow for me. And so I pursued that fearful, insecure thinking and tried to fix it and did all kinds of, really got engaged with it. And all the while, my own deeper wisdom, we could call it intuition, you can call it whatever you want to. The big surprise is that it's there waiting for all of us when we engage less with the fearful, insecure personal thought stream. And I can't say it enough. I've come to see that everything that I need is there. And it's from the practical, how do I build my business? What's the next step? But, it's like Marion, the story about manna falling from heaven in the Bible. Have you ever heard that? Like,
No.
Okay, so
that one.
If I'm doing, this is just my understanding.
Your God thing, if you like.
It's like, listen, it's like so Moses is taking the people through the desert, and manna falls from heaven every day, but you can only collect the manna for today. You cannot. This is the instructions from God. You're only allowed to collect the manna for one day. You can't hoard the toilet paper or the manna. So, in our fear, we hoard. We think we need to know the future. We need to control. This is a beautiful parable. So the manna, everything that was needed was provided for in the day. But if they tried to hoard it and keep it and store it away, it would rot. Okay, so the manna, so they were being taught to walk in faith. What you need will be provided for you when you need it. Now, this is relevant to me because I learned that in the present moment, here's the beauty of living in the present moment rather than in my mind, in the past or future. in the present moment, if I can relax and be at ease, what I need to do next will come to me. Now, I don't have a guarantee about what's going to happen next month, but next month and next year gets created through me accessing my greatest wisdom in the present moment. So that's my religious conditioning and background. Now wisdom uses those stories and shows me what that means for me now in my life. We often get caught up thinking we need to control and know what's going to happen. Our prime minister is coming on every day, and the journalists keep saying, how long is this going to happen? And I get kind of, frustrated with them. We all know we don't know. And so we don't know the future. What, boy, are we ever being shown that? The beautiful thing that can come from this is that we don't have to know the future. What will keep us safe as we ever need to be, is being in the present moment, accessing our wisdom. And our wisdom just tells us what to do next.
Moment by moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that you can live in a really beautiful way, that will lead you to openings, in terms of where you're headed in your life, that you couldn't imagine otherwise. It has been my personal experience. So again, this wisdom shows up. So we're talking about inner resources, and I'm going to just, under the label of, if I can tap into my own inner wisdom, then I can navigate these times with greater grace and ease, and navigate my life circumstances. That's all we need. If you have that, you have everything, and you'll have a contentment. And even though you'll go in and out of your personal thinking that's fear-based or insecure, when you let that settle, you will drop into this wisdom that's within us all.
So everybody asks, don't they? How do you fix your thinking? How do you get it to calm down? How do you get that to stop? And you can't, because it's like a washing machine. If you put your hand in the washing machine, it's going to go round and round, isn't it? So we don't go into our personal thinking, and otherwise, because it's not going to stop. We're just creating more and more of that. But I'd love to hear you talk about that more, because I'd love people to see that it's not about fixing. It's not about having to make it do something. It's just about allowing it to settle.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, Marion. Thank you. And this is really key, because we've all heard that saying, what you resist persists. So if I dig into my personal thinking and try and fix it and change it, that's a rabbit hole that's endless. And this way of falling into or accessing our deeper wisdom, I want to say, I wish there was a simple path to that for everyone. But again, it comes back to people doing what feels right to them, what they resonate with. I could say, I did yoga, I did Reiki, I went down all kinds of paths for a certain amount of time until it didn't feel right. But all of that served me. It all served me in helping me discover my own inner wisdom and my own inner resources. So what I would say that, so it's not about fixing anything. It's not about resisting the thinking. It really is about relaxing as much as you're able to. And we're all going to have varying degrees of capacity. Now, when I couldn't sit quietly, I would go for walks, or I would do yoga, or I would do something to help my body and mind and this system that was all wound up as tight as a spring because of the thinking that I'd listened to all my life. Now I had to learn to listen to what was drawing me to it. So at different times in my life, different things drew me in. So I would say that really people have to discover for themselves. But again, certain things will draw you in. Whether you just sit for 5 minutes in the morning with your coffee and let yourself settle, or you take 10 deep breaths, or we're still able to go for walks here in nature. we're an expression of the natural world. So, my body and physiology does really well. In Japan, they're talking about forest bathing. It's so the more we can let ourselves settle, and we each find our own way to that. It's really BS that someone else can tell you exactly what you need to do. That's a part of the problem. We so want someone outside of us to tell us what to do and how to find this, and if you could bottle this and sell it to me, I would buy it in a minute. And yet we each are on this adventure and this journey to our own inner wisdom and our own inner peace. So, all I can say, I had to discover it for myself. It's there. You don't have to fix anything, but you do have to fall out of this fascination with the personal narrative. And I call it, when I do coaching, I often just help people be less attached to the inner negative narrative. And when we're less attached to that, this deeper wisdom, our truer nature, then can reveal itself. But hey, Marion, if you feel called to go for a walk, you feel called just to sit quietly, this deeper wisdom is already there. It's whole and complete. You don't have to create it. You don't have to try and make it happen. It will emerge in you. And that's the beautiful mystery of it all for me.
I think that's a beautiful place to stop. And I think as long as the people know that they don't have to do anything, that it is possible that the mind quietens itself.
The mind quiet, yeah. If in the personal conditioned thinking, if I was trying to fix that and make it be something it wasn't, I could spend a lifetime trying to do that. Yeah. When I just don't identify with it, let the personal mind quiet. Again, what arises is whole and complete, and it's all there for us already. We don't effort our way into it. We just think ourselves away from it. So once we're not thinking ourselves away from it anymore, it will, if we give it opportunity, it will arise. And we just have to learn to recognize it. It's not going to necessarily, it can be really incremental that we learn to recognize that deeper wisdom. And it doesn't have to look profound to anyone else. It's not necessarily going to. I don't think people looking at my life from the outside think I've got access to anything. They just look and think, boy, she's a much happier, more peaceful person than she used to be. I wonder what's going on. And so this is what's going on. This deeper wisdom and these inner resources are making themselves known to me. So, and that's there for all of us. So
thank you, Catherine. Catherine, that was lovely and profound as always. I love listening to you. So next week we'll be talking again. So there'll be something else that we'll be talking about next week. But really, all roads go back to inner wisdom, don't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We all have our own path back home, don't we? So it's just my passion to facilitate that for people if I can.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marion.